Right in the heart of modern-day Mumbai sits a paradox. Home to 1 million people, the tiny slum of Dharavi is simultaneously everything you think it is, and also nothing like that at all. This is a neighborhood where homes, factories, schools, and sewage all exist within an arm's reach of one another. A place where children play in piles of garbage, and where people live life on a knife's edge between just getting by and just utter destitution. And yet it's also a place of tremendous opportunity. It's where many doctors, lawyers, and businessmen call home, where Indian industry spreads out to the entire country and even the world, and where a dirt-poor community turns over an astronomical $1 billion collectively every year. So, how did one of the poorest places in the entire world come to be situated right in the center of India's financial heart? How do people thrive here in the harshest of circumstances? And why does nothing about it make any sense at all? Dharavi is a place that shouldn't even really exist where it does. And very soon, well, it might not exist at all. Just let me interrupt today's viewing experience to tell you about our fantastic sponsor, and that is Huel. Look, if your version of meal prepping is grabbing whatever's left in the fridge from last night's takeaway and hoping it counts, well, it doesn't, and I've got a better solution for you. And that is, of course, our sponsor, Huel. I have been using their high-protein starter bundle this month. In fact, longer than this month, actually. It's fast, it's shake and go fast. You just shake it up, you open it up, you drink it, it's easy. Makes sticking to a routine easier. You get a 10ml pouch of their chocolate black edition, 5 ready-to-drink bottles, which I mentioned in a previous ad that I already finished, and that situation hasn't changed, and a shaker. It's all plant-based, there is no prep, and it actually tastes good, which is an important thing. It's been helping me skip snacks and cut out the what am I eating today brain drain. Comes out to just $2.65 a meal, not bad for something that doesn't involve dishes or decisions. If you want to try it, click the link in the description below and use my code PLACES20, huel.com/places20 to get 20% off your high-protein starter bundle. For new customers only, $75 minimum, runs through January. And now back to today's episode. Welcome to Mumbai, India, the city of 22 million people where cash is king and margins are thin. We're in the heart of the subcontinent's financial center, just off the west coast of the nation, but we're not here to view the spectacular high-rises and billion-dollar business deals, at least not yet. We're zooming in further, and we're not aiming for the fringes. We're headed right slap bang to the middle of the city. Anywhere else on Earth, this would be office towers and swanky C-suite boardrooms, but this is Mumbai, the city where the richest and poorest are often mere streets apart. Surrounded by mansions, beachfront property, and financial districts sits the subject of our focus today: Dharavi. Mumbai has a long history of financial might, and in doing so, it has attracted people from all over the world's largest democracy. 60% of Mumbai's population live in one of the city's 2,000 slums. People looking to make their fortune flock to Mumbai like moths to a flame, finding a space and starting out at the absolute bottom rung of the ladder towards wealth and success. And that rung is Dharavi. Mumbai's biggest slum, it is stacked to the rafters with corrugated iron, tarpaulin, and makeshift housing. A mishmash of buildings thrown together and grown like an organism rather than being designed by urban planners. A veritable sea of shanty houses and shacks parked between a pair of railway lines that feed the city like financial blood vessels. In truth, it's tiny. Dharavi is only 2.39 kilometers, or just under a single square mile in size, and yet it is home to roughly 1 million people. Neighbors popping around asking to borrow sugar must be a near constant event. Here, people live in tiny huts, and they make their living doing what they can to survive. Children go to school nearby, people set up market stalls to make ends meet, and others work jobs elsewhere in the city. Here, life goes on constantly amidst a tidal wave of people and an ocean of opportunity. Calling Dharavi just standard city hustle and bustle feels inadequate. Those phrases were invented for places much quieter than this. Dharavi is often called Asia's largest slum, but this is a reference to the sheer number of people living in a continuous informal settlement, not classic square footage. In our research, we couldn't find a slum with more people in Asia, so I guess congratulations? Everywhere you look in Dharavi, it's a maze of alleyways and narrow dirt passageways between concrete abodes, sheet metal, piles of trash, and people. So many people. Overhangs of buildings and power lines dangle precariously over people's houses, whilst the odd tall building sticks out like a sore thumb. Interestingly of all, settlements like this, slums, favelas, shantytowns, whatever you want to call them, operate in a funny grey area of the law. They're technically illegal. These kinds of settlements just kind of spring up with no urban planning or really any kind of planning at all. Despite the total lack of any real enforced bureaucratic system to govern how these kinds of settlements are built, they're tolerated once they exist. I mean, what are you going to do? Arrest 1 million people? Dharavi is a recognised slum that is built on a system of informal construction. Many residents here have ID cards, ration cards, and access to electricity and water, but no legal ownership of the land that they live on. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg when you start to look at Dharavi and just how bizarre of a place it really is. From the massive amount of industry going on here under the surface, to the fact that this is where the award-winning 2008 film Slumdog Millionaire was based on, Dharavi is a lot of things. And one of those things is weird. Many people who live here are second-generation residents whose parents moved in years or even decades ago, where they're scratching out a living in one of the many industries within, or going through education aspiring for a brighter future. It is a true melting pot as far as India is concerned as well. People have flocked here from all over the nation throughout the decades and even the centuries. No matter your caste, your religion, your ethnicity, or what region your family is from, here you're all Dharavi, experiencing this diverse patchwork of Indian life together. So, how did it all begin then? Well, it's fair to say that today Dharavi bears no resemblance to what this land used to be. Indian urban expansion has happened so quickly, with its population booming, that if it did, that would be really rather weird. All of this used to be marshlands and tall grass back before Mumbai was Mumbai and when it was formerly known as Bombay. Back then, the city was comprised of 7 islands, separated by the Mahim Creek from the hinterland. Dharavi back then was a tiny fishing village on what was the periphery of a city that has since swallowed it whole. Newspapers as far back as 1909, from what we could find, described Dharavi as one of the 6 great Kalawadas of Bombay. The Kali people were fishermen, and Wada just means settlement in Marathi, just one of the dominant languages of the region back then. Some of the first people recorded as living as settled people in Dharavi were the Kalis, who lived at the edge of the creek that came from the Arabian Sea and fished there. During the 18th century, Bombay started to undergo both intentional and unintentional land reclamation projects, which started to transform what would become Mumbai from a series of islands into one cohesive landmass, a city. But in the process, the creek that the Kali fisherfolk relied on dried up and deprived them of their traditional source of sustenance and income. The trade-off for the city rising out of the sea was that the emerging land from the marshes provided space for new communities to move in. Now, you'll have to excuse us because we're simplifying a few centuries of extremely complicated caste, colonial, and cultural history here, and if we really went down the rabbit hole, or rather the fishing hole, we'd be here all day. But over the decades and the centuries, Mumbai would continue to grow and expand as people migrated to it from all over India. Some came willingly, others didn't really have much of a choice, but they all ended up in Mumbai all the same. The point is that all across the subcontinent, you had a massively diverse range of people, castes, ethnicities, and the professions that they brought with them. Near-ancient industries like leather tanning from arriving Muslims and pottery from arriving Gujarati communities became household staples of industry among many in Mumbai. In Dharavi in particular, they proved universal to the extent that they're still being utilized to make money there to this very day. This is also what made Mumbai, and especially Dharavi, the diverse Indian patchwork it is today. People came from all over and settled in the same places. They mixed together, shared cultural traditions, and merged. As the city continued to grow in the early 20th century and more industries like textiles would soon cause another population swell, the pressure on the land and the amount of space people had to live in increased, so as all cities do, it expanded. A couple of renewed electrified rail lines would be put in here and there that now mark the boundaries of the Dharavi slum to this day. Over time, this expansion completely enveloped Dharavi, so it was no longer this fringe former fishing community, it was now creeping towards the heart of what would become one of India's largest cities. Post-independence in 1947, there was a massive rural-to-urban migration, and Mumbai just didn't stop growing. Housing supply was already outstripped by demand, but it was from here onwards where informal settlements would start to spring up more and more all over Mumbai. Dharavi, with its now pretty central location, absorbed tons of these people who would continue to foster industries out of their own home workshops. By the 60s and 70s, it was locked in the dead center of Mumbai, and by the 80s, hundreds of thousands of people lived on this tiny patch of land. During the 1980s, it was widely acknowledged as having a lot of problems. Spoiler, not many of those have been solved, and we'll get to that shortly, and it was the first time that funds were offered and redevelopment projects were considered to make Dharavi a more livable place. Even failing full-on redevelopment, the 80s were the first time that services were both offered and improved on for the hundreds of thousands of residents of the slum. The state, long having turned a blind eye to Dharavi, now formally recognized it, but it didn't really change much for those living there. As the 1990s came and went, the outer periphery of Dharavi became awash with high-rise buildings as Mumbai didn't just become a big city, but a financially and globally recognized one. India was experiencing a period of economic boom under liberalization, and with nowhere else to build out, property developments went up, which is how Dharavi ended up as a slum surrounded by skyscrapers. The Slum Redevelopment Scheme was launched by the Indian government in 1995, which aimed to replace informal settlements like Dharavi with formal housing stock. A lot of redevelopment ideas were floated and projects were launched, but they all failed to drastically transform the place, especially with a lack of communal buy-in from those living in Dharavi itself. Take 2003, for example. The regional government decided to redevelop Dharavi as an integrated township, but the plans drew protests from the residents who were wary of the size and quality of homes being offered in the redevelopment, and so it never happened. Piecemeal upgrades came here and there, access to electricity and water improved enough to stall any real urgency. By the 2000s and the 2010s, the piecemeal redevelopment approach was replaced with the idea of just solving the whole darn thing at once, a process that remains as difficult to achieve as it is controversial to this day, but we'll get to that later. If you're doing a whistle-stop tour of Dharavi history, that's about all there is to it, minus the million other details that we've no doubt missed, and I'm sure you'll remind us of in the comments. But that is the past. What about the present? What is the situation on the ground in Dharavi like today? Well, like everything about Dharavi, it's complicated. So let's get to it. Okay, we want to frame Dharavi as fairly as we can, given that places like it can often be hampered with stereotypes on all sides. Many will assume that it's just this cesspit of depravity, inhumanity, poverty, and crime, whilst contrarian views will often overlook the real issues to have a "this is why it's actually good" stance. We want to give you a balanced assessment of the environment on the ground. Reality just doesn't fit into neat little narratives. It is messy, and Dharavi is as messy and as complicated as anywhere else. All good places have bad aspects, and all bad places have good ones. And you'll see that in the way we talk about both Dharavi's problems, but also in its more redeeming features. But for starters, not going to beat around the bush here. Some people think it's unfair to call Dharavi a slum because it makes unfair inferences about the place itself and the people living there. But when you look at images of Dharavi, no other word matches what you'll see. Unending stretches of narrow, dirty passageways, open sewers flowing through the thoroughfares, cramped huts made of corrugated sheet metal and cinder blocks, young children running about barefoot playing in the fields of garbage. Sometimes you just have to call a spade a spade. And let's be clear when we say that this is one of the most densely populated places on the planet. The population's a little hard to nail down because it's floating and because everything is informal here. You don't register with local authorities when you move here, you just find a shack or you build a shack and you start living. So as for a population, some put it around 600,000 residents, but it's most likely going to be well over 1 million people. And this is an area just under 2.4 square kilometers, or just under 1 square mile. That's not dissimilar to the country of Monaco, the second smallest country in the world. The population of Monaco, about 38,000 people. So if you want to imagine just how densely populated we're talking here, imagine if Monaco had 26 times the population it currently does, and then imagine where all of those people would live. I'll give you a hint. There wouldn't be space for an F1 track. Dharavi is less than half the size of Chennai's own airport in the same country, so it is absolutely tiny. This is a population density unseen almost anywhere else in the entire world, not since somewhere like the Kowloon walled city of Hong Kong was demolished. We're talking about 250,000 people, 250,000 per square kilometer. It's the most densely populated neighborhood in all of India, which isn't exactly struggling for people to begin with. The result of this is that people are living in tiny abodes shoulder to shoulder, entire families living in a single 4 meter by 4 meter room. there's very little space for privacy, and the only reprieve from that is outside, where there are a million other neighbors you also can't escape. Because of being what's known in some circles as an informal settlement, there are no regulations around things like public waste disposal for garbage and sewage, so it often is just strewn around everywhere. There's no set standards for safety around how buildings should be erected to make sure they're safe for families, sometimes multi-generational families, all living under one very small roof. Most houses are little more than corrugated iron shacks, shanties with exposed electrical cables passing overhead, acting as a constant threat of electrocution, spiderwebbing out across all of Dharavi. Inside those houses are usually single rooms, comprising of a bedroom, kitchen, and living room all in one, often with few or no windows. Private bathrooms are uncommon. Some homes do have them, but most don't. According to a 2006 Human Development Report from the UN, there is only one toilet in Dharavi for every 1,400 people. It might have changed. Holy that's gonna smell. It might have changed since, but if those numbers are even remotely similar now, that's a worse ratio than many overcrowded prisons. The result of this, and the lack of sanitation services to Dharavi, is that the Mithi River, which is just to the north of the settlement, and who some call the Mahim, is where many residents dump their trash, wash, bathe, and also go to the bathroom. Lovely. Those who have visited Dharavi have often said that the smell is genuinely horrific, with garbage and other substances being visible floating on the water that thousands rely on. What doesn't help is that homes and buildings in Dharavi also have a distinct lack of ventilation because there aren't any windows for many. The industries that people undertake to survive can also cause harmful byproducts to circulate inside, and the poor sanitation often leads to outbreaks of epidemics that ravage the settlement because people are living in such close proximity to each other. Typhoid, cholera, leprosy, COVID-19, tuberculosis, and polio are just some of the many illnesses that have struck Dharavi over the years, leading to any number of health complications and deaths. I mean, how do you socially distance in a place like this? You just don't. When you throw all of that together, plus the trash, it is just a recipe for people in Dharavi to live shorter lives than those just meters away in the rest of Mumbai. Natural disasters also cause greater than average levels of suffering. Mumbai is a coastal city, and India's monsoon season often hits it hard. Those in Dharavi with their exposed power lines and tiny leaky shacks can have their homes collapse if they're not structurally sound. Floods are also dangerous. People, but especially children, can fall in filthy rising water, and trash and sewage water will flow through the streets for days after the fact. Fires are also a massive risk because everything is built on top of each other and the safety standards are just non-existent. People can work and graft for years only for everything they've ever built to go up in smoke. And when disasters strike on a wider scale across the whole settlement, it is often cut off because there's no infrastructure there other than the railways, which are usually adversely affected as well. And here is where you can start to see maybe the largest overarching problem with Dharavi, and that's the lack of regulation, not just in planning or building or safety, but just in everything. No regulations whatsoever means the entire settlement sits on a house of cards which could just come crashing down at any moment, and the people living there have no rights to affect change in their community because they don't have the money and their communities are deemed illegal by the Indian government. To put it plainly, there are not many more difficult places to live in the world today for people who are entirely free than Dharavi. So then why, pray tell, is this poor scrap of dirt and metal considered the richest slum in the world? I mean, don't forget, that's why you clicked on this video. One question might be playing on your mind at this point. Just told you how hard it is to live in Dharavi, about how truly grim a place it can be, so why even move there in the first place? Every year people continue to flock to Dharavi. Why would people willingly choose to put themselves at so much risk and in abysmal conditions? Well, it's all about location and opportunity. Dharavi is located pretty much slap bang in the middle of one of India's biggest cities, which is constantly flourishing with business, but whose property prices are skyrocketing. It may not look like it to you or me, but for a poor person from the sticks in India with not many chances to make money, this is the land of opportunity. Right between two sets of train tracks, here is a place people can live for cheap, travel to the rest of the city, work hard, and survive whilst looking to make their lot in life better through graft. Yeah, it's a slum, but that's not a cultural failure, it's a systemic one. It reflects a problem not of Dharavi but of India in general. A booming population of over 1 billion people and not enough housing, not enough development opportunities in rural areas, and not enough forward planning to account for the surge in people that results. For those without means, still willing to try and make something of themselves, what are your choices other than to move to a place like Dharavi, start from the bottom, and try and work your way up? Other people were born there, will always live there, work there, and will die there in the hopes of giving better lives to their children. And that's where we need to talk about one of the genuinely highly uplifting things about Dharavi, despite its circumstances. And that's that Dharavi is chock full of enterprising people and growing businesses, more than 12,000 of them in this tiny space. It's also why the slum is considered the world's richest, not by individuals with wealth, but by the cumulative amount of money that flows through it via these businesses every year. The collective turnover of Dharavi is reportedly over $1 billion every year from the sheer tidal wave of business going on. No matter which way you shake it, even having access to a tiny morsel of that money is life-changing for many Dharavi families over months, years, even decades. Amongst the many small and micro-scale industries are things like embroidery, textiles, leatherwork, soap-making, pottery, even abundant recycling from the sheer volume of trash people have turned into gold. Everything here is recycled. Plastic bottles, bags, pens, cans, cardboard, computer parts, car batteries, wires, metals, paint cans, and even oil drums all get reused or repurposed. The benefit of living among the trash is that there are opportunities to make money from what people throw away. There are even food businesses making things like hot meals, chai, cakes, poppadoms that dry out in the sun, and whilst you or I might not eat them, a lot of people do. Aluminium paint canisters are refinished, clothes get woven, parts for appliances are soldered together, and a lot of it ends up in domestic markets, but some of it even ends up in international ones. There's even a burgeoning tourism industry here. Several companies offer exclusive views inside Dharavi for people to see and experience what life is like here. Some tour companies were started to act as a way to counter the narrative about Dharavi from even inside India and Mumbai itself. Krishna Pujari, who runs reality tours and travel, did an interview with Al Jazeera where he spoke about the need to challenge perceptions of Dharavi. Quoting here, "When I first visited Dharavi in October 2005, people who lived outside Dharavi feared it. Many friends warned me that if I entered Dharavi, I won't be able to come out. I saw hardworking people who were proud of the fact that they had built a life for themselves with their own talent and perseverance. I wanted to showcase that in my tours." End quote. That's not to say that despite the incredible amount of hard work and enterprise, that it's easy to make a living here, far from it. Many work environments, especially those on the more industrial side, are highly dangerous and downright toxic to work in. And by toxic, we don't mean their bosses aren't nice to them. People are working in small warehouses with little ventilation, whilst a choking combination of soot, smoke, chemicals and sewage sting their eyes for hours and hours every day. Electrical cables are haphazardly strewn about, and health and safety is more of a suggestion rather than a rule. Safety equipment isn't really a thing, accidents are common, and many people suffer hard manual labor every single day to try and make their money and keep the dream alive. It's also worth noting that this isn't a place just for people to come, barely subsist off their meager incomes, and get stuck forever, though many do, as is the story with such places all over the world. There are countless stories of people starting in the common industries there, like tannery and recycling, eventually making enough money to afford small storage warehouses in Dharavi and to expand their businesses, eventually owning companies and renting out spaces, allowing them to leave the area completely. This is a testament to the relative success story that is Dharavi for many people, and it's also why people continue to move there every year. Look at a place like New York, when it was first gathering its influx of immigrants looking for a new start at the bottom of the ladder in the 19th century. Take away the glitz, glamour, and dollars, and Dharavi, as a concept, isn't all that different. People are always going to go where the money and the chance to make it is. Doctors, accountants, lawyers, and more grow up, work here, and study here before finding employment in the city that acts as their big break. And those who live here are often just trying to make the best of their situation, which can lead to ingenuity to create creature comforts even in a place as hard to live in as this. Those electrical cables offering a constant threat overhead is because of the lack of planning and the informal infrastructure, sure, but it's also because those who didn't have electricity went out and got access to it. As a result, much of Dharavi now has electricity pretty constantly, and whilst it's far from a safe way to do it, it does show people have a genuine willingness to improve their lot in life, to light their homes, to power their businesses. The money people have managed to get in from their work has allowed people to have gas stoves to cook meals. A lot of houses even have some access to water that doesn't come from the filthy river. Now even the smallest of rooms in Dharavi have things like colour TV and cable connection, which is important to those living there. They've got the comfort of watching soap operas in the evening with their family. Inside many homes are people trying to make their little corner of the universe a clean and comfortable place to live. Every little iteration makes people's lives that little bit easier, and it all came from the people themselves who live here despite the challenges. That's Dharavi. And that's why it's messy, and it's not black and white. It just is. Dharavi, through its immense industry and opportunity, has given many pause to rethink what a slum actually is. And that's large communities making the best out of their difficult circumstances through community and hard work rather than the standard perceptions of crime and depravity. Crime is even relatively lower than many might expect in Dharavi because of the forced communal aspect of living so close together. People know each other, reputation matters in making business deals with one another, and issues and disputes are often sorted out informally, as is everything else. That's not to say there's no crime here, that would be silly, but the vast majority of those living in Dharavi are just trying to get by, same as everybody else. For all of Dharavi's faults, and there are a lot of faults, a very large number of people have made the best out of a difficult start. And that should be applauded, whilst also talking about how bad the conditions are, how unsafe and unhealthy it can be to live there, sometimes for decades, and that a better solution is needed that uplifts residents' quality of life, that has them at the heart of the process, which, as you're about to see, is a persistently difficult thing even to this day. As we said before, Dharavi didn't come about because of a failure of culture, and it certainly isn't from a failure of effort, as we've just exhaustively explained. It came about because of a failure of systems. But that's almost not really the point at this stage. The situation now is it's here. It's been here for a long time. So if you're the Indian government, what do? For a long time, its choice was to pretty much just turn a blind eye to Dharavi, quietly acknowledging that the cost of formally developing the land probably isn't worth it, given its size and relatively sizable, even if informal economic output. But since the 90s, that idea has begun to shift, with the formal recognition of Dharavi and with a long-standing aim to redevelop it, transforming the slum into a modern township complete with proper housing and shopping complexes, hospitals and schools. Which sounds great, doesn't it? And the answer to that is, well, yes it does, but also no. Dharavi, even in its current languid state, has a fully functioning, sociable residential area with communities of different faiths, families, shops, schools and public toilets. A wide street serves as a busy thoroughfare, thronging with people, smartly uniformed children on their way to school, motorbikes, shops, food and clothing stalls, and so much more. The point is, there is a community here of people who want to stay here, even if many are just passing through. You might be tempted to say, it's a slum. The people there have no rights to be there. It's dangerous. It's bad for public health. Tear it down. And many people would share your view, but it's not quite that simple because let's say you do just tear it down and build something new there, more fitting for the heart of India's financial heart. I mean, where do the over 1 million people living here go? I'll give you a hint. They'll set up nearby and just do the same thing they always have. Just declaring an area residential or commercial or whatever doesn't make it so. Okay, so you have to house the people. Fine, find somewhere else in the country where there's more space and give people actual houses, apartments and warehouses for businesses. Except when this has been tried in other slums, people will sell their new homes and then return to where they were before because that's where the opportunities are. Okay, so you have to house as many people as you can, close as you can, in affordable housing areas that provide access to the area, opportunity to be economically stable, and a good enough quality of life that people will largely choose not to return. In the middle of Mumbai, with a population of over 22 million people, where the cost of property is very high, that is not an easy thing to do. The Indian government has to find that balance. Those million people have to go somewhere, and they've all got free will. Community spirit and family is a powerful thing in India, and in Dharavi in particular. For many, it is home regardless of the conditions. They want to stay even though they have the means to move elsewhere in the city. So the question remains, how do you house 1 million people whilst taking away their gainful employment, their family homes, and everything they've ever known? Well, up until now, you don't. Every redevelopment project of Dharavi that has been tried has failed because of this complex tightrope that has to be walked, combined with the nature of human beings to find comfort in what's familiar. For some, they ran out of money. Others, there wasn't the right amount of buy-in. For others, the residents took a stand on not moving even after the government gave them free places to live elsewhere. So is that it? Is Dharavi simply doomed to always be this way? To never develop into the thriving residential centre at the heart of the city, to never become that prosperous, clean, enterprising place that its people deserve? Well, maybe, but also maybe not. Because a new player has entered the game, and he has some pretty deep pockets. Meet Gautam Adani, Indian businessman, billionaire, and the second richest person in Asia. In fact, he's the 21st richest in the entire world, according to Bloomberg's Billionaire Index. He has a net worth of around $81 billion and made his money through Adani Group, a multinational conglomerate mainly involved in the industrial sector. And in November 2022, Adani Realty, one of his many subsidiaries, won a bid to redevelop Dharavi. Other backers in the past were small fry. They were nothing compared to this, and so it seems that the redevelopment, estimated to be worth around $2.4 billion, will this time go ahead. There is simply too much money on the table. Bulldozers are being prepared. By the time this video comes out, they might even have started demolishing homes. A case alleging that the project was unfairly awarded to Adani for $950 million is being considered in India's Supreme Court, but that small detail won't stop Dharavi getting obliterated this time. The idea behind the redevelopment is that those in dilapidated tenements will get to move into homes in modern buildings, either for free or for rent and purchase. And in return, Adani Realty will get to turn the place into a real estate goldmine in the heart of one of India's biggest cities. But just as all the other potential redevelopment projects that have come before, this one is controversial, and not just because of the potentially fraudulent awarding of the contract. How is it decided whether a person is eligible to be housed after their homes are bulldozed? Well, if you can prove that you have been living there before the year 2000, then those residents are eligible for housing within the new Dharavi settlement that is to be built there. One of the ways to do this is from a proof of tenancy, like an electricity bill, except that Dharavi only got full electrical coverage in 2008, and those living informally in shacks for the past quarter century or so simply will be left off the calculations. If residents can prove they lived there between 2000 and 2011, they become eligible to be moved into other designated sites and will be sold new homes for what is still quite a lot of money. Furthermore, those who are moved are likely to be moved far out of the city's fringes, away from their workshops, warehouses, livelihoods, and communal living infrastructure that they've come to know. In short, they'd be starting all over again, and with an expensive apartment or house to afford the upkeep of, many will simply be left as destitute as when they first arrived. Those who are left will not be offered anything at all, and most are worried about their livelihoods. And the calculations being used to offer accommodations are hardly fair either. Many decisions about eligibility are being made based on a survey done of Dharavi in 2009, but understandably, people's lives have changed a lot since then. 17 years ago. Businesses and families that have grown in a lot of cases won't be offered anything extra. Those who rent out their factories as a source of income will simply be out of pocket as well, which affects their workers the whole way down the employment chain. It's not much of a stretch to say this won't merely be the destruction of a slum, but also a community and the lives that share it. All in all, fewer than half of those living in Dharavi will be eligible for new homes. All the while, sleek mock-ups of a swanky new district replete with all the amenities of high-income lifestyle living is what developers are promising, far beyond the means of anything those currently residing there will be able to afford. Ultimately, there's just not a lot of say from those at the bottom who are just trying to get by. Those who are vocal critics of the development report being harassed and intimidated by law enforcement reportedly working for the development group. A spokesman for Navbharat Mega Developers Private Limited, the Adani government entity handling Dharavi, said all accusations of intimidation and harassment were unfounded and that their survey had been done with complete fairness and transparency. So everything's perfect then. We can just trust them. The people of Dharavi are being told that this is a better deal than those in other Mumbai-based slums, but it's hard to see how so many people aren't getting a raw deal here. Because their community was seen as illegal for so long, there was no means to legitimately, collectively invest in infrastructure and developments that the city would have accepted, and largely those living there were too poor to make it happen anyway. And now that Mumbai's property costs are high and the money is there, a fiercely self-reliant people who've built their own lives from nothing are being told they'll have to move to make way for the inevitable march of urban sprawl and the matcha lattes. We're not pretending to have all the answers here. You can see the argument from the government side as well. They don't want 1 million people living in squalor. They want dignified housing for the people there, And sometimes that means a company paying to come in and develop an area, and that means people having to move. Some will say that all progress comes with a cost, and those who set up their lives before can do so again. Those with businesses can find their way forward through that enterprising spirit of hard work, but it probably doesn't feel like that to those who will soon be homeless. And as the saying goes, no 9 words are ever scarier for the people to hear than "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Ultimately, there might be a more sustainable solution to rehousing the million people of Dharavi, but sustainable and profitable are often at odds with one another, and all too often, what the billionaire's company wants, the billionaire's company gets. They are the ones fronting the cash, after all. So where does that even leave us? Where does it leave Dharavi? And honestly, we don't know. The development of Dharavi is said to need to take around 7 years to fully complete, so there may be many more twists in the tale yet for this place that we can't really get our heads around. It's a place that throws up more questions and moral debates than it does nice and clean answers. Is it right for people to live in such awful conditions if it allows them opportunities that they never would have had otherwise? Is it then wrong to develop a place like that to offer better conditions for some, knowing it will cause immense hardship for others? And does it make a difference how that land is developed? Let us know what you think, because you could probably ask everyone in India and get 1.4 billion different answers. Dharavi is one of the most confounding places we've ever discussed on this channel. It is a total paradox, a contrast on Earth. It's inspiring as it is downtrodden, it's as beautiful as it is utterly disgusting. A place where the life expectancy plummets and yet offers many their best chance of a long and prosperous life. A slum that turns over $1 billion a year, a place where many residents need to stay and yet can't wait to leave. A place we've described as informal about 12 times in this video, and yet everything about it seems to be as real as a heart attack. A place where the people, for most part, are dirt poor, but are perhaps the richest in all of Mumbai when it comes to community spirit and hard work. Thank you for watching.